Geektopia in Plano, Texas. A haven for all things geek. All the fun little toys and games. If you're a geek, you will love this place. It's Geek Nirvana. Come and see it. We are going to build him a beautiful sign. Backplate, channel letters, blue. Blue isn't used that often in signs for a good reason. I'll tell you about later.
Every day we look at signs. Some are beautiful, others not so much. For a business, any business, a good sign is crucial. So where does a good sign come from? Who creates these tantalizing works of art? In the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, it's done right here by the people at Signs Manufacturing, the people we call the Sign Dogs.
Hi, I'm Chris Peterson. I am the owner of Geektopia in Plano, Texas. We sell video games, toys, collectibles, really anything nerdy or geeky, and also some things retro that don't quite fit into the nerdy or geeky, but in that vicinity. Started out as just a group, basically me and my niece and nephew and their cousin and some of their friends, going to gaming conventions and selling stuff in the vendor hall. And finally have opened up into a shop about 7 months ago. We've got this place open.
I mean, obviously you've got a ton of Star Wars stuff in here, and Magic the Gathering. I love Magic the Gathering. What is your criteria, I guess? If something cool comes along, are you going to be like, oh yeah, okay, I'll go sell that, or do you have
Pretty
a niche?
Much anything that I think is kind of geeky or nerdy. I mean, hence Geektopia, part of the name is because it's kind of geeky stuff, nerdy stuff, which, when you and I don't know your exact age, I'm going to guess we're somewhere in the same neighborhood age-wise, and when we were in high school it was, being nerdy was, kind of out there on the fringe a little, and definitely for a woman to admit she was nerdy was like social suicide, whereas nowadays it's cool.
Right.
And it's become a big thing, and of course women have embraced it much more. I'm always trying to find good feminine, geeky and nerdy items as well. I mean, they get into everything, but also like if I can find some cool purses, other things like that, I'm like, gotta get that, And it's like it's a fast growing thing, and I'm like, it's a good business, I think, to be in right now.
So when you're opening a business, you can do it on a budget, you can do it on a shoestring, or you can do it with lavish resources. Well, very few people have the lavish resources, and so pretty much everybody is either on a budget or worse, on a shoestring. Geektopia is an example of a guy who's on a shoestring. He's trying to make his lifestyle happen. It's kind of the American dream. And so what he's done is he's gone and found himself a location that is not the best location. It's kind of in a hollow in the sort of the back of a shopping center. He realizes that he needs a sign that's really going to make a bang so that he gets the most out of it as possible. And the genius of what his plan is that he realizes that the sign is paid for one time, whereas the store is paid for every single month. So he decided that he was going to put his resources into the sign because that was the most efficient advertising that he could do. So now it's up to us to actually make sure he gets what he's paying for.
Originally, the first convention, I had to have a name to put on the application to be at the convention, and I just pulled a name, out of thin air, and I was like, Gamecore, that sounds cool. Until I realized on paper, I'd say at least half of people, when they see the word core, they want to say corpse, because they don't realize the P is silent, and corpse has an E at the end. So anyway, and I'm very particular about things sometimes, so that bugged the living daylights out of me. I was just like, Game Corpse. I'm like, okay, so after the second convention, I'm like, I have to change the name. And brainstormed with some friends, and Geektopia was one of the names we came up with. I liked Nerdvana, but there's a coffee shop up in Frisco that already has that name, so I was like, okay, can't do that. And I had a lot of other, one Pixels and Bits was an idea. Like we had a bunch of different little ideas we knocked around, but I just thought Geektopia had a nice little flow to it, had a nice sound.
Blue may work great for a backdrop on a wall, but for signs, the problem with blue, much like green, is the human eye doesn't pick up the wavelength of that lighting very well. So even though technically it's just as bright as the other colors, your eyes don't perceive it to be very bright. So we have a workaround. We have a trick that us in the sign industry play to get that sign to stand out. We put a thin white border around the letters. And you'll see it on this sign. It helps the sign stand out, keeps that blue color. You do the same thing for green. You know, Starbucks does the same thing on their lettering. It really helps it stand out so that you can still see that color.
Huh. That is some amazing stuff here. I mean, in terms of collectibles, this is like collectible world. You got a lot of neat stuff. You're gonna have to tell Robert about this place.
Oh, I got business cards on the.
Yeah, Robert is one of my employees, and he's big into collecting.
Right.
Yes.
I will say Charles was really nice. I like talking to him, and he definitely helped sell me on the place, on you guys for the sign. Because one of the other, I talked to 2 or 3 sign companies before I made the decision.
Sure.
And one of the things with Charles was there was one place I talked to where they started showing me an option, and it wasn't even channel letter, which is specifically required in the lease. And I'm like, you're showing me an option that I can't even consider. Why are you showing me this? Whereas with Charles, he looks at, I sent him the paragraph or so from the lease that gets very technical about things. Mm-hmm. And so he calls back, he's like, I said, okay, so the lease requires this, this, and this. He's like, however, this thing, really, that's about a 20-year-old thing that made sense 20 years ago. But nowadays, it says it wants this specific thickness, but with modern materials, really, we can go with this thickness, which is a little bit less. And I was like, talk to the landlord. If the landlord agrees, that's cool. Like, I just want to make sure I'm in compliance with what he would like. Mm-hmm. And so Charles contacted the landlord. They explained it all. The landlord was like, okay, sure, that makes sense. So he was very knowledgeable about what he was doing with the years.
He's been doing it literally for 40 years.
Yeah, and he knew where he could stray from what the lease specifically says, but in a way that would still be the heart of what they want.
Right.
And was able to explain it to the landlord in ways that the landlord okayed it. Instead of this other store where the guy was just like, give me options that literally would possibly mean I'm breaking the lease by accepting them. Yeah. So that was,
you're not exactly you're not talking to them because you want a bigger headache.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And that was, you have people that really understand what they're doing, know their business, and are able to help me understand why maybe this other way of going could be better, and can explain it to my landlord so that I'm not doing anything wrong. Yeah, and that is worth every penny right there.
All right, the first thing that happens on this is we have a program for the channel letter machine to actually run through, bend the metal in its proper configuration to form the returns of the channel letter. The router cuts the backs out, cuts the back plate out, and then it also cuts the plastic out for the faces. Faces go to trim cap, with their trim cap and then solar guarded. The returns are mounted onto the back plates, which were routed out, and then the LEDs are mounted onto the back plate, facing towards the plastic face, and then everything is assembled onto the back plate once the back plate is mounted onto the raceway. That way all your wiring goes to the basically wireway. It's 8x8 box, basically what it is, the length of the sign. Put the mounting system on it and the power to go back to the wall, tie into the electrical. And voila, you have yourself a nice looking sign on the raceway.
The logo for the dancing guy, it's at one of the conventions. I was playing some old, I feel old saying old, but playing some old ska music from the 90s, and one of my nephews, Ty, he's really hardcore into it. He and his friends are, which years ago I gave him a thumb drive, just hundreds of gigs of old MP3s of ska, which he was like, and so he started dancing to it, and the figure, I call him Skankin' Ty, which is, skanking is what you call when you're doing the little dance where you're kind of and so he was doing that, and that's really, it looks like he's running, but he's really skanking. Anyway, that was designed by a guy named JB Kennedy of Double Tangent Designs.
How do you acquire your merchandise? Are you just buying it through your standard channels, or are you sourcing it from people who, I've been collecting this stuff for all these years, now I want to liquidate it, or what are you doing?
A combination of those. I mean, really, for this kind of shop, the standard channels really is garage sales and thrift shops, and keeping an eye on clearance at mass market retailers, because sometimes you can find stuff for a really good deal that someone just wants to get rid of. Now that the store is open, I do get people to walk into the store and have things they want to sell or trade, which is great. I have several guys who are actually go around and hunt themselves and look at these same places and they'll bring in some of the stuff they find and trade with me to get something else, and
Right.
which works out well and is beneficial to everybody. I think as the store grows, eventually the majority will be people just walking in wanting to sell off part of their collection or trade for something different.
The key to getting what you're paying for, at least in my view, is Solar Bright LEDs. Solar Bright LEDs are the result of years of ongoing research on our part, looking into all the suppliers around the world, all the methodologies that they're using, and trying to choose the one that is the brightest and longest lasting. And we do that pretty much regardless of cost, because frankly, LEDs are cheap anyway. So we figure, go ahead and buy the more expensive ones because you're going to get what you pay for, and it's really not that much extra money. When a layperson looks at a sign, it's very hard for them to tell just at a glance that sign A or sign B is better. But I'll tell you what they can notice, and that is which one's brighter. And if you walk into our showroom and you take a look at what we've got and compare it to the examples we have of what other people have built, it blows you away. And obviously, in the case of Geektopia, it blew him away. And so we're building him a pretty awesome sign.
I mean, you've got paraphernalia in here. It looks like you've also got games and things in the back there.
Oh yeah.
What's the advantage, or what does your shop bring that, your competitors don't necessarily have?
I think honestly, every store of this type, hell, come on in. Every store of this type, we all have something unique, just because you never know what you're gonna find when you walk into a shop like this.
Right.
So I mean, there are a lot, like there's Madness Games and Comics up the street, which is probably one of the biggest places in Dallas that does this kind of stuff.
Sure.
But I think what's unique is just the fact that you never know what you're gonna find here because of what I have, been looking for and prospected for. And, they also are, so it's like, if you're really into this kind of stuff, there's always room for another shop like this because you never know what you'll find. It's very different from store to store versus, say, going into a Walmart or a Target where you know what you're going to find when you walk in. But when you're going into a little independent game shop, you just never know what you're going to find.
Take a truck out there. You can either pre-drill the hose, or you can just swing it up there, mark the hose, pull it out of the way, drill them, put your hardware in the wall, swing the sign back up, bolt it to the wall. Should have already had your primary hole drilled to take the wiring through. And boom, you got you a nice easy install on a sign that looks good, easy to put up, and does a really good job of getting customers in.
So what do you think? Oh, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Been needing this for a while. Been open 6 months. People miss the store all the time, even with everything in the window. It's good to have a sign up, man.
One of the beautiful things that I really like about this sign is take a look at that blue lettering contrasted with that white glow behind the backplate. Blue and white is a powerful color combination, right, Dallas Cowboys? It really stands out.
All right, now that is a pretty nice sign, man. I am liking that.
The biggest thing I hope to get out of my sign is just more foot traffic, more people seeing that I'm here, and I've definitely seen a little bit of an increase really since it went up just in the last 2 weeks. So that's the biggest thing, is it makes the store more visible and easier to find. Overall, it was a pretty good experience. They would respond fairly quickly if I had a question. They worked very well with me when it came to getting the sign paid off, because it is not a cheap thing to get a good sign made. But I was very happy with the overall experience. The website is geektopiadelivers.com, and there is a Facebook page. If you search for Geektopia on Facebook, it will come up. Sign Dogs, honestly, Sign Dogs contacted me when they were getting the sign made and getting ready to come out and set it up, and they were like, oh, by the way, we're doing a show about the signs manufacturing. So I was like, oh, heck yeah, come on in, check it out.
Hi, I'm TK Madison. I am the owner of TK's here in Addison. We have a comedy club with a full restaurant side, a patio by a beautiful pond, a wraparound bar, and an underground speakeasy called Quinn's. The way the sign was designed, I think it looks beautiful. It's illuminated the way we want it to be done, and I think not having comedy club on there, people are going to come in here not sure knowing what it is, but they'll discover sometimes, oh my God, there's a comedy club, wait, there's a speakeasy. If they go to our website, they're going to know But I like the way the sign was designed because I think it draws people to us, and it's going to be great for what we want to get done.